This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Fresh kicks, spring tops, new dresses. There's always a score.
I mean, the denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Head to your Nordstrom Rack store to find can't-miss deals on all the spring things. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
We are back with another episode of Horror Movie Night, and this week we are talking about Re-Animator with its 40-year anniversary. Scott, this one was your pick, and I mean, I feel like there's obvious reasons why to pick this one because it's great, but how about you tell us why you picked this one, and then we can dive in.
Jeffy Combs, Barbie Crampton, Stuart Gordon, 40-year anniversary, head trauma, Lovecraft. I mean, that's it, right? Like that. Nothing else. Hey, thanks for listening to Horror Movie Night. That's literally.
I mean, that's kind of like. This is the first time, and I do not know how long that I have zero notes that I wrote down. Like this,
I only have notes because I had to write down the plot. Yeah, which no one needs. Like everybody knows the plot of the fucking movie.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like I was like, I have watched this movie so many times. Yeah. You know what? Because I feel like we're gonna speed run through the plot, and like there's a lot of thoughts that I'm sure are not new thoughts from any of us. How about we starting with Scott, Kyle, and myself, like your first time watching this movie, what is your memory of the first time you saw this movie? Because I know that none of us were like, today for the show.
Well, you know, Matt, since it's my pick, I'm going to start. And actually, it was yesterday I watched this for the just watched yesterday, the new movie starring Kate Hudson. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know when I saw this for the first time. I want to say that this was like a Sci-Fi Channel watch, like early high school. This and Return of the Living Dead back in like 1998, 99 were in heavy rotation on Sci-Fi Channel. So I'm going to guess that I saw the R-rated version first, and then I probably it wasn't until college that I saw, or maybe the end of high school, that I rented it and I saw the what is erroneously called the director's cut. There is no director's cut. There's just an unrated cut. Stuart Gordon actually never got to edit this movie. Did you know that?
No.
There is no director's cut. There is only the unrated cut, which was the original theatrical run, and then there was an R-rated version because they were afraid, or maybe the R-rated version was the theatrical run. I can't remember. I read up on it, but people are gonna come here and lambaste me for not having this right. Whatever. They've heard me say the wrong thing a lot on this show over the last decade. So anyway, yeah, there is no. Like Stuart Gordon never really got to cut this movie, which I think is very interesting.
I don't think that's too weird in the sense of, and Kyle, you might be able to correct me, this is only like his first or second movie, which tends to mean that directors are not getting as much final cut. That a studio is going to want to hand the footage to a trusted editor in those cases. Yeah. But I do get what you mean in the sense of like, director's cut has taken on this whole new meaning to people, and very rarely does it actually mean the director's cut. What they just mean is, hey, here's some more gore, here's some more boobies that you didn't get to see.
Yeah.
Because I know we talked about this when we talked about Club Dread.
Yeah. That
like they put out a director's cut of that movie that the director was like, no, the theatric version's the director's cut because I cut those scenes for a reason.
Yeah.
It is crazy that it is his directorial debut. Like like you said, it's this, then From Beyond. And I mean, even if he doesn't get to go in there and touch the film, it does clearly like have his voice all the way through, which it was an assumption on my part. I was just like, oh, okay, he just, it's just it's Stuart Gordon to me. It's just so him, which is great that still comes across even when somebody, gets into the edit and is, manipulating and making the movie what it is. It's still clearly like every piece of it is Stuart Gordon, which is crazy. I mean, I don't remember the first time I had seen it either, but I do know like how I first got it, it was this Millennium Edition 2-disc weird,
the green
like,
one,
that green one that, upon revisiting, it's like Elite Entertainment. I don't even know what company that, it's like an early 2000s double
That's
DVD.
what I watched yesterday for this.
Yeah. And I mean, there's probably, there has to be a better version out there, but there's something about, and I, as you all know, as a physical media guy, I do like to upgrade things that I love, and I love Re-Animator. It's probably one that I've watched more than some of the other ones that I even consider like my favorite films. I think Re-Animator is one that I've watched or shown more people or like whatever. But it's just one of those like fun time movies. Again, like Return of the Living Dead, like you said, Scott, is another one of those where I probably watch that like double digits along with
which is crazy. To think about watching a movie more than like 4 times is crazy.
Yeah. It's weird.
There's a part of me that's confident that I might be in the triple digits with how often I watch Re-Animator, because it was just because it was like
times.
Just because I think it's in that same cycle of like movies like Garden State or like Napoleon Dynamite or Sleepaway
Did you
Camp,
just have it on? Like
where I was, when I was in college
Not
and I was staying up
actively
until
watching
4 or
it,
5 in the morning,
yeah.
I would just like constantly cycle through either the same discs, or I wouldn't feel like getting up and would just click play again over and over again for hours. Like,
that is not a neurotypical thing, Matt. I just want you to know.
That is very neurospicy, and we appreciate that.
But Kyle, you mentioned this, and I guess I never even thought about it through this lens. I just want to walk us through the first 5 projects that Stuart Gordon is associated with, because it's much more insane when you think about it through this lens. 1985, Re-Animator. 1986, From Beyond. 1987, Dolls. 1989, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
It's
and then
chaos.
Right back to Robot Jocks.
Yes. The fact that Robot Jocks is that far along in his filmography is really the most surprising.
That's the
part
one
of
that
whole
makes
thing.
more sense. That should be the first one, and this is like the second movie that he made.
Exactly. I always thought that when I think that we weren't even horror movie night when you laid that knowledge on me that he did Robot Jocks, and I was like, had to be his first movie. And I think I forget until every single time this comes up and you remind me that this was Stuart Gordon's first film, because I didn't even remember that today.
Well, because it feels like a fully fleshed out film.
It's
like, you know
so
what I mean?
solid.
So my memory of this, and I may have talked about this before, but back in the day, you'd watch VHS tapes on your VCR, and if the movie stopped, like when the VCR stopped or the tape ran out, the VCR would shut off and it would go back to whatever was on, whatever channel your TV was on prior to you watching a tape. And this was like I must have been 4 or 5 in the afternoon, popped in like my Winnie the Pooh tape. And I guess my dad the night before had been watching HBO because that tape ended. And the first image I saw on the screen was a headless body attacking Jeffrey Combs from behind him while a talking head was on his desk. And it freaked me the fuck out. Yeah. And then my uncle
kind of changed the trajectory of your life, actually.
Probably. Well, but I was like, I am never watching that movie. Like, I was like fucking scarred from it. Yeah. And my uncle, who I talk about all the time, who had all these horror stuff, he had a deli, and he was like literally renting out his VHS tapes in the deli, and he had a huge horror section. And I remember he had that like Re-Animator, very specific VHS tape that had that scene as the cover.
Yep.
So I knew what the movie was called.
Rental store. That's sick. Deli disc. I would call it deli disc. Deli disc would be now.
Kyle knows what he's doing in the next 10 years.
DVD sandwich shop. Fuck free Blockbuster. Now I have a whole.
Kyle, I don't know if I've told you nearly as much about my Uncle Craig as Scott, but you and him would have been like this.
What's up, Craig?
I knew about this movie, but it was honestly 2 things happening simultaneously my junior year of high school that led to me finally seeing this movie, which was that I started dating a girl who was a film student. I was a junior in high school and she was a freshman in college, taking like film classes. So like whenever she would come over, we would just watch like whatever the art house film of the like flavor of the week was. And that's like where I saw like Secretary for the first time. Like we watched crazy shit.
Hell yeah.
But one of the we would also watch like the Academy Award nominated movies. One of which being American Beauty, that has a line of dialogue where Kevin Spacey is getting stoned with his next door neighbor's son. He's like, what's that movie where the head tries to eat out the girl strapped to the table? And the kid's like, oh, that's Re-Animator. I got it and I'll lend it to you. And then it like cuts to that scene. Like Kevin Spacey's like, hi, watching that scene of the movie. And I'm like, I've never seen this movie, and everyone like at that point, I'm on the internet. Everyone's talking about how great Re-Animator is, and now I can't find a copy of it anywhere. And the girl that I was dating lived in New Jersey, and we went to a Suncoast Pictures in New Jersey. I'm like, I want to see if they have Re-Animator.
That's where I bought the double disc for the Suncoast.
Yeah, Suncoast was the only place you could get this green Re-Animator DVD, and it was one of the first like 6 DVDs I owned.
Yeah. So, we still own it though? That's the question.
Still on my shelf. Yeah, that's one of the.
That's the one I have.
OGs.
Now,
I have
to go along with Matt's very green, his very green DVD of Re-Animator, I have Seventh Sun Brewing Company's The Scientist, and it is a lime green colored beer can.
Well, that's perfection.
That is excellent. And I went ahead and I snagged a Crispy Cat from Fat Orange Cat. Details later.
Well,
amazing.
And that's the other story that I know I've told before on this show. But in college, my away messages on Instant Messenger were always just quotes from movies.
Yes.
And one of my favorite away messages to throw up was Cat Dead, Details Later. And I stopped using that away message when I came home one day and someone had instant messaged me a very sincere message about how hard it is to lose a pet, and that like don't feel like you have to divulge what happened, but if I needed anything, she was there for me. Like it was like the most sweet message, and I was like, I don't know how to message this person back and be like, actually, it's just a quote from the movie Re-Animator from 1985.
That's of all the fucking weird stories that we've shared in the last 10 minutes of the show, I think that's the weirdest one, because if you think about Matt Kelly, like, I just can't see you being like, well, I have to explain myself. I mean, I can't see you not wanting to explain yourself. I would have had the same problem.
Yes, but like at the same time, you're like, is this going to make someone more or less embarrassed about the circumstance?
Right. Yeah,
that's
like,
true.
and that's kind of why I waited.
But like when you're 19 years old or whatever, your frontal lobe isn't that fully formed to think that way.
And again, this is why I would say that I've probably watched this movie hundreds of times, because this is right there with half the trauma movies that were always on my person going to someone's house when they're like, bring some movies for us to watch.
Yeah, how many
And I'm
DVDs
always-
were in your backpack?
Oh, they always had 10 to 15 options every single time.
DVDs,
great.
condoms. That's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
Matt
that's-
took in his
No,
backpack.
do you think I brought condoms? Come on.
No, I
there
mean,
was
you
no
brought 'em.
expectations.
No, you brought them. I'm not saying you used them.
I know. I'm saying that I
am-
didn't even have faith in that.
This movie is horror. It's cult. Like it has, and I love being able to have shown this to people. And I would imagine that there are still people that are like finding it through these
this
one-off
is-
like. These
This will be a
one-off
weird ass movie night
lines
pick
or-
one of these days because there are plenty of people.
who still have.
Yeah, I mean, you have both
That
met
blows
the
my
crowd. You know, like, yeah, as much as there's like Eli and Clore that come to Weird Ass Movie Night and know like every film that we play, there's also like so many people who are just kind of there for the hang. And this
Yeah.
is like that perfect third movie when like everybody's actively paying attention. Actually, just fun fact, because this ties back to Hard Movie Night beautifully. Now I've been letting people vote on the theme. And this month last month we did Full Moon February. And in a perfect world where I realized, oh yeah, that's right. Again, people don't know any better. That won because most of the people coming thought it was going to be werewolf movies. Like they had no clue that there was a film company called Full Moon that existed.
Oh, I mean, I should have known, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking it was werewolf because I was like, how exciting!
I immediately thought that it was
Yeah.
Chucky
so
Dan.
they watched Demonic Toys, Puppet Master, and Bad Channels. And my
Great
God,
choices.
the room when that Psychotic Symphony video started playing in Bad Channels, like everyone was just stoked. It was a good time. I love being able to give Weird Ass Movie Night updates on Horror Movie Night. But anyway, now that we're 15 minutes into talking about Re-Animator without talking about Re-Animator, Scott, I would say the stage is yours to give us what I think can be a pretty concise and simple breakdown
This
of
is
this movie.
this is what I was thinking. I was like, this is going to be a
Concise
good
for me.
pitch to somebody. Like, God bless you if you've not seen Re-Animator and you're listening to this and you've got stoked and now you're stoked on it. And Scott's going to get you even more stoked because this shit is crazy.
It's such a good movie. Like
So
it's so cheesy, but like it's I want to have a little preamble here. The special effects department went through apparently 24 gallons of fake blood during the shoot. The guy that was like the head of the special effects for the movie said that the most he'd ever used in a film before Re-Animator was 2 gallons. So 12 times as much blood in this movie as that guy's most bloodiest film up to date, which I just think is hilarious.
And it shows.
Yeah, this movie is incredibly wet.
So I just want to quickly Google what's the most amount of gallons of blood used in a horror movie.
It has to be
And
Evil Dead 2012, right?
So
2013.
the answers that it gave me were that the substance used 36,000 gallons of fake blood in a singular scene.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's 36,000 gallons? That's insane.
Listen,
that's a pool.
That's according to Entertainment Weekly. Who knows how much we can trust that. Evil Dead Rise used 1,770 gallons.
What the fuck?
Nightmare on Elm Street supposedly used 500 gallons.
Oh, sure for this.
And
That's a
it
hot
says-
tub. Okay, I
And
can
says
see that.
Dead Alive used 300 liters of blood. So I don't know what the liters to
A
gallons,
gallon
but that's in a
is-
singular scene. Was one scene used 300 liters?
Oh, and that was probably the lawnmower in the
probably the
front,
lawnmower through
in the
everybody.
foyer scene.
Yeah,
But
but this has got to be amongst the 10 heaviest uses. My point being that all these years later, I would still say that Re-Animator's in the top 10 bloodiest movies.
Apparently
that's ever
not.
been produced.
Like, how are these things by orders of magnitude more blood?
That's
than
just
this movie,
that's just efficient independent filmmaking. Maybe
Yeah, there
they
we
saved all that
go.
blood.
Yes,
They reused
exactly.
it.
They used a lot, but
Re-Animator,
they didn't use
reused.
that much.
Yeah.
Reuse. Okay, now that is a T-shirt design that needs to happen. It's some sort of reduce, reuse, Re-Animator.
Oh fuck yeah! Oh, green.
All right, so the last part of the preamble is that this was apparently David Bowie's favorite film. Did you know this?
I love that.
Can
bro.
kind of get that. I didn't know that, but like
the guy that was doing a documentary about David Bowie was apparently like DP or something on this movie, and David Bowie found out that he had worked on Re-Animator, and he like very excitedly on the first day of shooting or whatever for David Bowie's film, he runs up to the guy and goes, "You worked on Re-Animator, right?" And he goes, "Yes, I did." And he goes, "That's my favorite film." Like, could you imagine David Bowie coming up to you and being like, "Yeah, Re-Animator, my favorite movie"?
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean,
unreal.
That totally tracks to me. Because I think this has that sense of humor that is very in keeping with like the David Bowie aesthetic of sense of humor to me.
Yeah.
You are probably a better judge than I am, because reading that little tidbit today was just wild. Anyway,
yeah.
So if you are interested in this film and you have not yet seen it, no shade from us. It's so good. Go watch it and then come back. Pause this. Come back when you're done, because we will be giving a spoilery but relatively short explanation of the film. So
yeah, if it's good
Jeffrey
enough for David
Combs,
Bowie, it should be good enough for you.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so Jeffrey Combs is the titular character, Herbert West, Re-Animator. This was based, as I said, on a series of short stories. I think there were 5 of them, written by H.P. Lovecraft. And the funniest thing about that is that H.P. Lovecraft kind of hated this character. The only thing he liked, this is, probably apocryphal by this point, but it is said that the only thing he liked about the Re-Animator stories is that he got paid $5 a pop to write them, which is a lot of money in 1900 or whatever he was doing. So, okay, Jeffrey Combs plays Herbert West. He's a brilliant but insane neuroscientist, and he was working under this doctor named Hans Gruber, and he dies, brings him back to life with this reagent, and then he dies again. And in his defense, Herbert West says, "I gave him life." So we then see that he has left Zurich, where he was previously studying, and he is now at Miskatonic University in Arkham, Massachusetts, which is the historic area town where the vast majority of Lovecraft's stories occurred. He's continuing his studies at Re-Animation. He rents a room from this fellow student named Dan Kane, who is dating a woman named Megan, played by Barbie Crampton, who is the dean's daughter. Dan gets introduced to West's Re-Animation studies in the basement when West kills the cat Rufus with a brick, brings it back to life to show Dan that his reagent works. Dan has to kill the cat a second time because it is vicious. And then Herbert West goes on to reanimate the remains a second time, just to show that he can. At this point, Megan comes in and she sees what they're doing and is freaked the fuck out, as one would be. So at this point, things are starting to unravel. Dan goes to his girlfriend's dad, and the dean, and says, "Hey, Herbert West is doing this very important research on reanimating dead tissue." And the dean says, "You're insane. You're a terrible student. You're expelled." So they have to go to the morgue and body snatch to continue their studies. They bring someone back. He accidentally kills Megan's dad, the dean, who then gets reanimated by Herbert West. But when you're a zombie in the Re-Animator universe, you are basically like a mindless killing machine, which is great because the one thing that Stuart Gordon said about this is that they had wanted to do a pretty faithful adaptation of the original source material, and it kind of fell much closer after a lot of back and forth with the studio, with kind of a Frankenstein parody, which, I mean, it works. It's interesting to like. So just a little backstory for me. I had never really read the source material. This past summer when I was on a road trip, I was listening to a bunch of audio tapes of Lovecraft stories, and I listened to all 5, I believe there are 5 of them, of the Re-Animator stories. And so it's very interesting to rewatch this film and kind of see what still stuck, because like the body snatching is a main concept that comes in. Like Hans Gruber is a character that kind of is, and the Dean. They're all kind of these reimagining of the
Is it
the
in like a
source
school
material.
scenario? Is it in
Yeah,
like
it's at Miskatonic.
or environment? Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's at Miskatonic. But it's obviously not in the 80s. It's in like, I believe 1910, or maybe it's late 1800s.
So it's contemporary for what he's writing.
Yeah,
okay,
more or less. Yeah, but it's just interesting because I had known that this was not faithful to the original stories. It's interesting to see the things that made it past the studio meddling, because Bride of Re-Animator, which we've talked about on the show, is very obviously a Bride of Frankenstein coded film. This movie doesn't really feel like that as much to me. It's kind of its own thing, but I understand that it really toes the line between Lovecraftian weird fiction, where it's like science gone mad, and then
because
like
we've
zombies.
thrown around the zombie word quite a few times, and the dead are alive. This is a zombie film, but it never feels like a zombie film to me. And I think a giant chunk of that is because zombie films are about the zombies and the survivors of the zombies, most likely. And this, like, the zombies are like the fifth most important thing, because it's more about the guy who's creating the zombies. You know what I mean? And that, like, that takeaway from that focus does so much to make it feel like it's its own thing. Like you said, it feels more like a Frankenstein story than anything.
Yeah, but it also doesn't feel 100% Frankenstein, because he has... I mean, he's got a similar motive, I assume. I mean, I guess, but when you really break it down like that, but it just has its own flavor, and I love that about it.
Yeah. I love also what you were saying about sort of what the reanimated bodies like want or do, and there is this level of like agony of being back alive that is determined by the amount of sort of fluid or the amount of like experimentation that happens, like per body or per experiment.
And also the length of time that they're dead, which is kind of the whole reason why they reanimate the Dean immediately, is because West thinks, the reason why my creations are insane is because the brain tissue has been dead for too long. But it's not really why. It's because the reagent kind of makes you insane regardless.
But what an incredible like hypothesis, right? Like I love the exploration of a hypothesis and the continued like it really. This type of mad scientist movie, which I would say people probably categorize this as a zombie movie more like before a mad scientist movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Just like, just like reflexive, like categorizing of it is more of a zombie movie. But the mad scientist part of it all is so much more intriguing the more and more I watch it. Just watching how Herbert West is really, really trying. He's cocky and he's arrogant. And he has all these traits. But he really is trying to prove his point, and in a science that does not make any sense, but it makes sense to him, and he has to try it. It's like he's the only one who's going to do it. That's why there's so many obstacles and roadblocks ahead of him.
That's what's, I think, the most compelling thing about the titular character of this movie, Herbert West, the Re-Animator, is like weirdly the most neutral character in the film. You know what I mean? Like, he's strictly just a man of science. He's not like doing this with evil plans of world domination or anything like that. So like on the bad guy side, you have the headless reanimated corpse,
Dr. Hill.
You got Dr. Hill, and then you have like your obvious good guys
like Dan, basically,
Dan and Meg, and then like Wes is just like in the center as like a neutral agent of chaos throughout the entire movie.
Well, yeah.
I was going to say chaotic neutral is what he is.
That's so true, because it's also like, how do you deal with a person who's trying to make this happen and is making it happen? It's not a perfect science yet, but there is an attempt being made, and he's thwarted a villain in some capacity, but he's also caused our heroes kind of a big headache here as well. And it's just like, how much of a leash do you let him off on? And that's kind of our point of view too as an audience. It's like, how much are we going to also watch and enjoy and let sort of Herbert West do this thing? And I love that we just sort of like, he just does it all. He just fucking goes.
And the only time that he actually murders someone is he murders Dr. Hill. He decapitates him with a shovel because he calls him a plagiarist because Dr. Hill's trying to steal his work.
It's such a vile thing he could do.
That's what I mean. Again, to go back to the D&D phrasing, like, he is just chaotic neutral.
He doesn't. And it's so funny because when you think about, and this, I really do like that characterization of the Re-Animator is true to the original story. He also, in the same way, in the source material, is completely oblivious to all the harm he's doing, and if the reagent worked, the harm that he would be bringing into the world, because he keeps reanimating dead bodies because he's trying to perfect his serum, right? The problem with that is that the dead bodies aren't, even when he keeps, in the original story, he keeps burying them, and the headless antagonist is actually not a doctor in the original story. It's a colonel, like an army, like a military guy who gets decapitated. Because in the beginning of Bride of Re-Animator, when they're in some country where they're in a jungle and people are getting blown up, and that's where West is now doing all of his experimentation. That feels very much like what's happening in the later Re-Animator stories, because he's doing his experiments where he can find fresh bodies, and this colonel, I believe, gets decapitated. And he reanimates the body and the head separately, and then it shows up in America later, looking for him. And that's one thing that I really want to talk about. In the entire series, this seems to happen every episode or every installment in the franchise, where West is kind of blinded by this desire to experiment, and he doesn't care about all the baggage that he continues to grow. Like, there's all baggage, or these zombies that are coming after him. Like, at the end of all of them, all of these movies that I have seen, I don't think I've seen the fourth one, but anyway, the first three at least, the end is always his creations taking him away, right?
Yeah.
And it just seems like that's really interesting because he's so short-sighted. All he cares about is the science. He doesn't care about the consequences, and it's just it also adds a lot of that dry humor to me. Like, this wouldn't have worked if it wasn't Jeffrey Combs. He gets it. I think it's because he's he was originally a stage actor, like a thespian, and so he gets the idea of playing a straight man so far to the left that he is almost, I don't want to say it's slapstick, but I mean, because this movie kind of does have some slapstick in it. It's so funny that I love this movie so much and hate slapstick. But, West is such a straight man in this that he becomes the one making jokes. Like you said, Matt, like, cat dead, details later. Or like, who's going to believe a talking head? Like, he has all the best lines in the movie.
Yeah.
It's just so funny because, like, they're all deadpan delivery, and it works so well because he's just not neurotypical, at all.
Yeah.
He's just so singularly focused.
I've been re-listening to a friend's I gotta figure out the proper way to word this. I've been re-listening to one of my friend's old podcasts where they rewatch the show Friends.
Okay.
That's a mouthful.
But they were talking about, like, there's this thin line when you're doing sitcoms, when you're doing comedy movies or whatever, which is that line of, like, a character who is funny and a character who you are trying to make the audience think is funny. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like when you push it too far into the, like, this character the audience is supposed to see as the funny one, they like stop being realistic in any way, shape, or form. But it's like every silly line that Herbert West delivers in this movie, it makes 100% sense for the character to make that comment, and like for the most part without humor or without irony, in just a very, like you said, very monotone, very deadpan, like just kind of like he's almost annoyed at Dr. Hill for thinking that he has an upper hand on him.
And then but like they the funniest thing about how oblivious Herbert West and Dan Kane are is that these guys are supposed to be brilliant scientists. They don't know how to work a door lock, because if they had, so many things would be better if they had just locked the door. Like, you know, Megan wouldn't have seen the dead cat. Megan's dad wouldn't have died, and then Megan wouldn't have seen her dead dad. And then, most importantly, Dr. Hill's body, headless body, wouldn't have snuck up on Herbert West while he's interrogating his head. All these things could have been avoided.
Yep, every single one of them. God, it's such a good movie.
So the end of the movie is literally that, like, they have a big zombie brawl in the morgue, and as a last-ditch effort, Herbert West ODs Dr. Hill's decapitated body with reagent. It makes his intestines come to life, and as he's being pulled away, he screams to Dan, "Save my work!" So Dan and Megan escape, but on their way out, Megan dies, and with a tear in his eye, Dan injects her with the reagent. That's definitely not going to end poorly for them at all. The end.
No, the science has been confirmed, and everything will work out in the end. For sure.
Yes. Happy endings for everyone here at Horror Movie Night.
It is crazy. I remember when it was when I did Phantasm, the documentary that I did, and I interviewed my buddy, my now really good friend Jack Bennett, but we were just acquaintances then, and he was explaining that, you know, watching a horror movie with a group of friends is like, and it's like by the time you get to the moment in Re-Animator where there is a decapitated head in between Barbara Crampton's legs.
Trying to give head. Yeah.
You just sort of look around and are like, what the fuck? Like, what is happening? And this movie does do that. I think you kind of are along for the ride, but if you step back outside of yourself and sort of like think about what you're watching at any point in time, like I think beyond the cat part, when you sort of like start to realize what you're watching, it really is. It's a roller coaster. It's an absolute roller coaster of a movie, and I'm so glad that we did it for this show.
Yeah, it's about time.
It only took 40 years.
All right, now Scott,
over the hill, over the Dr. Hill. Is 40? Is 40 over the hill or is 50?
I don't know. Don't tell me because I'm
40
years old now. Shit.
I think it's 40,
it's 65.
but
it's the right.
Yeah, listen, it was 40 because people didn't live past 80 back in the day.
That's true. Yeah. Over the hill is
now we don't even need reagent. We'll just live forever and be in the agony of being alive.
Introducing the Internet Supreme Court,
a live stream show that casts judgment on anything the internet touches, from memes to billionaires.
We served Elon Musk with a court summons.
He still hasn't responded.
Because he's a coward.
Join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We're on Twitch and YouTube Live. Find out more at internetsupremecourt.com.
That's internetsupremecourt.com. We're also on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Hear that, Elon? Blue Sky.
Scott, if you were having friends over to watch this movie and they were like, that was a lot of fun, we should watch something else, what would you make them watch?
Kyle, add another check mark by The Kindred.
All right!
Well, on that note, Kyle, also add another check to Frighteners.
Yeah, oh my God. Yes, exactly. Amazing. See, this is a comfort movie, and it brings comfort movies to the forefront. I love that.
Wow. It is a comfort movie, and I know I said it earlier, but I am going to say Return of the Living Dead. I just like, it is the perfect pairing.
There's no losing. All of these are winners.
So. There's a couple others. I was thinking again about The Substance, but it's just a little too long to double feature with anything, at least in the way I think about it right now. You know what I mean?
Can we get a director's cut that's not longer? Can we have them cut 20 minutes off of the substance and make it?
Can we have an audience cut? Kindred, Frighteners, Return of the Living Dead as our double features. Unreal. Beautiful.
I love both of them. So I love all of that so much. Now, Kyle.
Yeah.
You know what another great double feature could be with Re-Animator?
What do you think?
Ouchie. Which I believe is available for people to do that double feature now from the comfort of their home. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. No, we did our last festival screening on the 23rd of February, so like I'm a couple weeks late. I'm sure you've probably seen it in the Facebook group by now, but if you haven't and you are purely a listener in an oral form, oral, then you can see Ouchie on YouTube. If you just search Ouchie with an IE, Kyle Kukta, or Ouchie short film, Ouchie body horror. I don't know what the right terms to search all this is right now. I don't know how that works, but you can find it. It's on my YouTube page, which is just Kyle Kukta film. At the moment, you can find it there, and I hope you dig it. We had a lot of fun doing it. I'm glad it's out there. There's some ooey gooey parts. There's some funny parts. There's a good team behind it, me excluded. I'm just kidding. I was
you're the dark horse of the team.
I really fucked this one up, but I'm glad everybody else did a good job. I'm just kidding. I'm so proud of the production of it and the actual product of it, and I'm glad that people get to see it now because we've had a really good response. It's been really fun. It's been different, and I'm so happy that it's out there. So check out Ouchie. You can also this is another personal plug, but like the best way to kind of keep up to date about what I'm doing on the film and creative side is to just check out my website and sign up for a newsletter. I mean, you can follow me on all the social media that you want. I don't know how effective or efficient or how long I can fucking handle it, but I can definitely write a newsletter every once in a while, so you can check out that out too. KyleKukta.com is where you can also find Ouchie. You can navigate pretty easily through my own personal website as well.
And speaking of newsletters, shoot us an email at hmnpodcast@gmail.com. Be a part of our newsletter because social media is becoming a cesspool. But while we still have social media, HMN Podcast is where you can find us on Facebook, on our Facebook group, on Instagram. That's mostly
Letterboxd is popping off. I gotta tell you,
yeah.
every week when I post something, there's some new likes, there's some follows. We're having a good time over on Letterboxd too. I'll have to give you guys the password, which you guys are gonna snicker at the password. But I'll give you guys proper access.
Woo! Well. I love that. I do. That makes me really happy to know that that's doing well.
I didn't have to make my own Letterboxd. Shit.
Yeah.
Go to patreon.com/HMN podcast for a bunch of bonus fun from us. Go to our website, hmnpodcast.com, if you want to buy some merch or if you want some exclusive shirts like, I don't know, possibly a Re-Animator shirt that may or may not be up there by the time this episode comes out. Look us up on TeePublic. And lastly, Scott, what is something that you've been watching, reading, listening to, etc. that you want to talk about?
This is show and tell, so for the Patreon, I am very excited to say that I got to read one of my white whales, Blowfly, by David Lohman, 1989, 1985, what was it? It's 1984, David Lohman, Blowfly. It was on my eBay wish list for months. This is literally the only thing that I had on my eBay wish list because I love bug monster books. I've talked about it before, but if you're new here, I love bug monster books, and it was super hard to find it. There just weren't any copies out there, and so I made myself an alert, and I get to the gym. I go to the gym early in the morning. Well, like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and I get there. I put my water and my towel on, in my little spot, and I check my phone, and it says there's this copy of Blowfly on eBay, and I could not have gotten there fast enough to buy it. It was very inexpensive, and the funnier part about it is that 2 days later, another copy came up. I almost bought it as well, but I was like, no. I only need one copy. I don't need to be that kind of crazy bug book collector. Just need one copy of everything. And I am happy to report that all of the tropes that Matt and Kyle are aware of in this subgenre of horror were there. The love interest, although all of them were there, but this was a much better written book than I was expecting. I was expecting more Guyan Smith schlock, and it actually had a little bit of gravitas. Like, the characters are fleshed out. The women aren't described by how big their bra size is. It's still gross as fuck because it's maggots, but it is surprisingly a good. It's one of the better of the bug books that I've read in the past calendar year since I started really getting into finding these and reading them. So I'm actually giving a pretty strong recommend. If you can find a copy of Blowfly by David Lohman and you're into the weird grossness that I like, you might like that as well.
Well, I love to hear that.
Maggots.
I'm going to give a very quick shout out and then like a slightly more detailed shout out because Kyle and Scott have both talked about it. But Humanist Vampire Seeking Consenting Suicidal Person is on Shudder. I am the last of the three of us to watch it. It's a delight. So go watch it. I have nothing to add that Scott and Kyle haven't already said. And I don't think I talked about this yet, but on Netflix, a movie that I was looking forward to watching in 2024, but never got out to the theater to see it, dropped. And I think it's probably one of my favorite films of 2024 now. It's definitely my favorite movie I've watched this year so far, which was Saturday Night, a film that captures the 2 hours right before the first episode of Saturday Night Live goes live on the air. It's someone described it as like the comedy version of Uncut Gems, because it's not that stressful, but it's that like you are following Lorne Michaels as he's trying to wrangle a bunch of different coked up comedians, trying to explain a show that's never been done before to a bunch of studio heads who actively want it to fail, and just kind of like this chaotic 2 hours right before they go live, to do something that had never been done before, really. It takes a little bit of there's like elements of creative liberty, but I like what it achieves in doing that. But yeah, it's just, I think it's a very smart movie. I walked away from it being like, I like that movie. I mean, I'm also like a weird, as I think people know, like, I love the history of comedy, and Saturday Night Live is such a giant piece of like the puzzle of we don't get the movies that we're getting even in 2025 if Saturday Night Live isn't a success in 1977. Like, for better or for worse, you know what I mean? Like, it was this groundbreaking kind of chaotic energy that comedy wasn't used to, and there's this really kind of cool scene where Lorne Michaels has to go and get a new camera guy because his camera guy just quit an hour before the show. And he goes to this other show that's filming to see if that guy will quit that show and work for him that night. And the reality is that the show that he's walking in on is a show that didn't exist in 1977. It was like a show from the 50s. But like, it's this beautiful moment where throughout the entire show, people keep asking him like, well, what even is the show? And he doesn't know how to describe it. Mm-hmm. But like, he walks in and like, this is supposed to be the late night variety show that's like all the rage. And it's basically just like Milton Berle dancing with a bunch of showgirls to like a song from the 40s, and like it's very dry and like not thrilling at all, and there's just this like silent moment where he's staring at that, and you kind of get the vibe of like, I don't know what my show is, but I know it's not ever going to fucking be that. Like, and it's just like a beautiful scene with no words kind of expressing, like, it's hard to explain why Saturday Night Live is important unless you have the context of what was variety television before Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And it was that. It was like, here's a comedian and here's some showgirls, and they're going to do a very G-rated set of jokes and then sing a song. And so it was, I really highly recommend it. I had a blast with that one. So that's my big recommend right now. And Kyle, send us home.
Yeah, I mean, this is I've had a busy couple of weeks, fortunately and unfortunately, but a busy couple of weeks where I've not been able to watch a lot of stuff. But I am sort of like, I know.
He's been rewatching Newsies. He's really busy.
I'm really, really busy watching Newsies and Newsies over and over and over again.
It's his new Re-Animator.
So I've not been able to watch much else besides sort of like what we catch up on for the show, which is, again, it's a blessing because it makes me at least watch two things that I will inevitably enjoy in some capacity, even if it's a movie we don't like. But what I do, I did watch a movie called Mindfield, and this is I watched this almost a couple weeks ago now. So that's the other thing about having Letterboxd. God bless you, listeners. But if you now follow me, now this is a little insider baseball. And he's like, that motherfucker's talking about something he watched 3 months ago. But this is how it goes sometimes. I watched a movie.
They're getting their free entertainment. They can't complain.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? Listen, I didn't write a review on Letterboxd. I just put a star rating. So now you get to get a little bit more in depth about what's going on in my mind field. So this is a Canadian conspiracy thriller starring Michael Ironside from Scanners, who and the poster is looking very Scanners-esque. The poster has him like hooked up to some sort of EKG, and it's this whole thing. But it's basically it's an MK Ultra story about him being a police officer that's also, the police are on strike, or they're going to go on strike, but he's investigating this series of murders, but it's deeper than just random murders. There's this thing that he's following, but it turns out he was part of an MK Ultra experiment, but he doesn't know, and now they're after him. Are they after the girl that he's seeing? Are they after another? It's just this. It's a conspiracy thriller that has a little bit of what I'll call sci-fi flair. And of course we know, MK Ultra is not so much science fiction as something like Scanners, but it is more of like but it follows those beats a little bit as well. Kind of fun to watch the Canadians do what I feel has a lot of, like, these things happen to the North, strikes and, the way that like a police state or a police influence upon a city. It all happens to the north of us. But at the same time, there is like kind of this little silly lens that it adds to it by being Canadian. And Michael Ironside he's really good. He's a good B actor. He just carries things in a certain way that I will always enjoy watching him. It was put out by one of Vinegar Syndrome's partner labels. I had got it on a sale, and it was just I like those things more and more, but it's not something that I normally will sit down and be like, I want to watch a conspiracy thriller. I think that because of the things that are happening in the world, it's not a great comfort zone thing, but that's also because I think I watched it before the inauguration. I'm not sure. The 21st of January. Okay, shit. I'm right on the dot is when I watched that one. But I did want to talk about it because I do think if that is a genre that you dig, it pairs nicely with a 70s American one, like a conspiracy thriller. Like, it's just a little bit different. It's a little more indie. It's a little gritty, but not, blown out of proportion. It was a fun watch. That's Mindfield. And I had a poster. I got this a while ago. I got this series of moldy video store posters from an antique store that I had 50 of them. I think I pawned off a couple on you guys at some point in time. But Mindfield was one of them. I have the monkey
up in my room in the basement.
That's right. Right. Mindfield was one of them, and I think I ended up getting rid of it. But What are you going to do?
All right. Well, I don't know what we're going to do, Kyle, except for talk about more anniversary films for the rest of this year. So stay tuned for Kyle's anniversary pick for the month of March. And we'll be back with more Horror Movie Night.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.